Hey, what's going on, guys? So really good day for Ethereum. We're pushing, looks like we're at 3362, but it looks like it's going to keep pushing here all the way up to 3400 because we just got the news that the procedural vote for Congress had just passed to move forward with all these crypto bills. Now, what that means is basically the way that works is they have a procedural vote that's basically says, yes, we're ready to go ahead with the official vote. It's basically saying that, yeah, we have no more little negotiations or anything to take care of. I'm happy with it. Let's go ahead and vote on it. So that is what has passed. Now what's going to happen is they're actually going to go ahead and vote on it. As of right now, they're saying that they're going to vote on it tomorrow. So that'll be Thursday. Once that gets approved, once the Genius Act and all these other bills get approved, what's going to happen then is it goes off to the president and then he signs it and then it becomes law. And then these large financial institutions can start launching and going really heavy into stablecoins, launching DeFi platforms, and start really accelerating the adoption here. And the market is certainly reacting to that. But let's go ahead and take a look here at some really interesting news from Bank of America. So we know that there's been rumors that Bank of America is looking to build on Ethereum and whatnot. And so we have Bank of America identifies Ethereum as stablecoin growth driver. Now, in my opinion, all these big companies are going to choose Ethereum. You know, you don't get fired for building on Ethereum because it's the largest, most secure network out there. So the TLDR here is Bank of America launched a new weekly digital asset report focused on blockchain and stablecoin developments. The report identified Ethereum as a leading infrastructure for the expanding stablecoin market. It says Ethereum hosts over half of all stablecoins in circulation and supports major payment integrations, talking about like smart contracts and building out sort of, I guess you would call it DeFi platforms. It's in between DeFi and TradFi. It's basically TradFi building decentralized type of applications and whatnot, utilizing Ethereum smart contracts. So U.S. legislative developments like the Genius stablecoin bill are expected to influence Ethereum's adoption. The Treasury projects the stablecoin market to grow to $2 trillion within 5 years. Now, that is actually one of the more bearish takes that I have seen on this. I've seen all the way up to, I believe it was 3.8, maybe it was 3.7 trillion by, that was Citibank. And then that is only talking about US dollar-backed stablecoins. They aren't talking about other countries around the world launching them. So you got to think that that's going to be whatever the base, like let's say that it is 2 trillion worth of US stablecoins. I would say that it's going to at least be double that whenever you include other country stablecoins like the euro or, you know, Japan or fill in the blank other country. You know, they aren't going to be left behind with this innovation. It would be like the United States adopting the internet and then the rest of the world just doesn't adopt the internet. It just doesn't make sense. Now we can take a look here. So Matthew Seagull, recovering CFA, had posted out the report here. And so it's interesting at the bottom. It says, during a gold rush, sell the shovels. While too soon to pick winners just yet, we believe infrastructure providers such as Stripe and the Ethereum platform, on top of which public chains are run. So that's talking about like Base. Like, for example, if Base or Robinhood, who just launched their Ethereum layer 2, that's what they're talking about whenever they talk about public chains running on Ethereum. Or here they give the example, or the one that's just being used by JPMorgan to pilot its tokenized deposit JPMD. I'm assuming that means the JPMorgan dollar. Could potentially become the new rails for driving interoperability across digital assets. And see, this is the thing where you have why I say that Ethereum is the winner. You can't have a financial system where it's fractured and it's running on all these different L1s. We're going to start to see a trend where like Lisk and Celo, they were layer 1 chains and now they have converted to be Ethereum layer 2s because they want to tap into that larger ecosystem. It's like, you know, if you have an Amazon store and there's somebody that's not on Amazon, they're going to make more money if they have an Amazon store than if they don't, because you're tapping into a larger audience, larger customer base. Now they go on to say that Ethereum is a decentralized platform and cannot be owned. However, investors have access to its native currency, ETH. And I like that they made the distinction there, because whenever I think of Ethereum, I think of Ethereum as the ecosystem, which includes, you have the Ethereum base layer, which secures everything else that's built on top of it. You have the layer 2s, you have the apps, everything that is built on top and within the Ethereum ecosystem is Ethereum. And then you have ETH, the native money of that ecosystem, or the oil of that, the digital oil for this ecosystem. And so it's really good to see that TradFi is starting to understand the distinction between the two and the necessity of ETH, the underlying asset, to secure that entire financial system. So moving on here, we can see that the price is absolutely just going vertical. It's just going straight up. It's really interesting because if you look at the history of Ethereum, this is what it does. It has these periods where it just kind of consolidates sideways, and then when it's ready to go, it goes and it continues to go, and it doesn't really have that steep of pullbacks. So, if we're breaking out of this long, what is that, a 4-year bull flag essentially, it's just going to keep going. In my opinion, once we break this little trend line here. So, and something else that kind of makes me believe that that's what's going to happen is the golden cross here on the daily time frame. So it's really bullish, something that a lot of traders look for. Something else that had happened was there were some rumors going around saying that Trump was going to fire Jerome Powell today, that he'd written a letter. And so let's listen to what they have to say about that.
President Jerome Powell, do you have plans, or if you're back considering firing Jerome Powell? What's your justification if you're thinking about it?
Well, he's too late. He's always been too late, hence his nickname, Too Late. He should have cut interest rates a long time ago. Europe has cut them 10 times in the short period of time, and we cut them none. The only time he cut them was just before the election to try and help Kamala or Biden, whoever the hell it was, because nobody really knew. Obviously, that didn't work, but he tried to cut them for the Democrats, Kamala. And how did that work out? You'll tell me. It didn't work out too well, did it? But he's I think he does a terrible job. He's costing us a lot of money, and we fight through it. It's almost, the country's become so successful that it doesn't have a big impact, but it does hurt people wanting to get a mortgage. People want to buy a house. He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed. I was surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and extended him. But they did. So, no, we're not planning on doing anything. We're very concerned. He's doing a little renovation for $2.5 billion of the Fed, building a renovation, and they have a close to $900 million cost overrun, and it's a shame. But the biggest cost overrun is the cost overrun for interest rates, because we should be paying 3 points lower, and we would save $1 trillion a year in interest if that were the case. And all it is the stroke of a pen. And that goes for his board, too, because...
So, again, there's no hiding that the president does not like Fed Chair Jerome Powell because of the interest rate situation. So, there are some good points there. Home prices are more expensive. And we've covered on the channel before how 1% or of interest rate increase or decrease can really affect getting a mortgage, which a mortgage payment would be. Really, the president doesn't really have the authority at all to fire Jerome Powell. So, I think there's a lot of political posturing, trying to put pressure on the Fed to get interest rates lower. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to read into here. I do think that they are going to start cutting. I expect that we are going to see the first cut in September. And going into with Ethereum, right now we're moving up just on fundamentals alone. So every prior bull run has been triggered with low interest rates. So, we're moving up in an environment where you have higher interest rates. And once that stimulus starts to kick in and we start to see the global liquidity cycle kick off more, and we're seeing global liquidity start to rise, that's really what's going to fuel this into January 2027. Anyway, I think that pretty much wraps up today's video. Until next time, y'all take care.